The Beetrooper deck is, quite honestly, a modern tragedy. They had everything stacked up in their favour to finally be a decent TCG exclusive. After all these years, we got an insect deck that managed to tie together all the random pieces of fairly broken support that the type had, like Resonance Insect, which, for some reason, is a non-once per turn search and Foolish Burial. It was looking to be the Ogdoadix of insects, finally fixing a type that had long gone unloved. This was, of course, because we were all so full of hope for their second wave of support. I mean, the first wave was so good, so surely they wouldn't screw up the second wave, right? Yeah, it was a disaster. Worse versions of monsters that already existed, a spell turned into a trap, and still somehow made worse. And let's not even forget the fusion monster that basically just gives other decks a super poly target. Basically, it was just a complete slaughter of everyone's hopes. I mean, the deck managed to be rogue was only the first wave of support, but everyone really hoped that the second wave could make them actually meta. But nope, they were staying exactly where they were, only really gaining a single card that could help them recycle banished monsters in a grindier game. Of course, in Master Duels, they could be pretty strong, what was their ability to search Max C, but they just don't exist in that game, at all. So people kinda just forgot about them a bit as they faded from the meta, still fearing what every bug type has always feared, giant rocks. Then came Battle of Chaos, and like Night Sword Serpent in the set before, the TCG swooped in was a piece of generic support that was actually good enough to run, Dragonbite. Being not a dragon for once, this monster is actually a level 4 insect tuner. Now we already have some tuners with the Battle Wasps, but they're kinda too lower level to make your usual synchro targets. This one is not only a level 4, but can also banish an insect from the field or graveyard to increase one of your monster's levels by that banished card's level. It also has a second effect where, when you normal summon it, it can special summon another low level insect from the hand. So this is all interesting in a few ways. First of all, it's either a starter or an extender thanks to Armor Horn giving you a reliable second normal summon pretty much every turn. Secondly, it's a way of getting out some other good extenders that would otherwise require a normal summon, like Scout Buggy or even Sting the Poison. Now it's true that the deck wasn't running low on extenders, since you'd fill most of the deck up with them anyway. But this one doesn't lock you out of other monster types, unlike say Twinbo the Attacker. This is important, especially for the reason you're all here for, synchro summoning. Now the thing is, insect synchros suck. There's no way to sugarcoat it, they really don't have anything worth making, despite having an entire archetype of insect synchros. With Beetroopers usually locking you out of non-insect monsters, it was hard to find any synchro that you could make. What was the combination of low-level tuners and having to make links out of most of your monsters? But with this card, that's no longer the case. It can easily become a level 6, 7 or 8 tuner, depending on what you have in your graveyard, and so can easily make a Baronne or a Borrelade Savage Dragon. But that would be too simple. The right thing to do maybe, but also too simple. So I threw in some Hulky 5-Vax combos into the mix. You see, while Dragonbite is too high of a level to be summoned from the deck by Hulk, Sting the Poison isn't. This matters because, despite just being a little low-level guy, it actually has a quick effect negate, making getting to this card quite valuable. You can then send it to the graveyard, it doesn't really matter, since you can just revive it on your opponent's turn with Seraphim Papillon. You're then free to combo off from there on, but with some hands I actually found it beneficial to do something that no one has ever done before. Resolving Hulk's second effect. Be honest, tell me now in the comments, do you actually know what Hulky 5-Vax's second effect is? I'll give you a second to think about it. Are you done? Well, its second effect, that basically no one has ever used, is actually pretty good. On your opponent's turn, by banishing itself, it can just straight up summon a Synchro Tuner from your extra deck. This opens up a few cool lines like using Formula Synchron to draw a card before going into something else. Possibly your Baronne or Borrelade, or even a Shen in some situations. But what if you have an Atlas on the field? Well, even then, Hal can just spawn a Desert Locust, a monster that rips a card from your opponent's hand before going into another synchro if Atlas ever leaves the field. The only downside with all that is that, due to all the many different levels of everything in this deck, It's hard to predict what you'll be able to make in the way of synchros. This makes the deck's combos quite hard to play, with every hand giving you a fairly different result. But thanks to Seraphim Papillon and Cicada King both being able to revive monsters, you can bring back something that's a useful level, and then thanks to the draws and even sometimes searches you'll be getting on your opponent's turn, you'll actually have a chance at a comeback on turn 3 thanks to the resources you've gathered. So between Baronne, synchro summoning on your opponent's turn, a powerful counter trap, and let's not forget Insect Winder, you can make a bunch of powerful varied boards with this deck thanks to the new support. Let's have a look at the deck, shall we? So here's the deck. Monsters, monsters as far as the eye can see. If it wasn't for the searchable, powerful counter trap, I'd almost be tempted to try Sekka's Light. Well, if it also wasn't limited, of course. Pretty much everything here is an extender or a combo piece, so you're really just trying to vomit everything from your hand onto the board and hope your interruptions are strong enough to survive the opponent's turn. Thanks to stuff like Baronne, that is a lot more likely now. Anyway, let's start with the Beetroopers. Run 3 Scout Buggy because it's a free Cicada King, so even though it locks you into insects when it's on the field, you can immediately remove it by making Cicada King, which in turn is your most reliable way to get Scary Moth out of your hand or graveyard. Scale Bomber is a good extender with a potential destruction effect, so it could be a good revival target for Papillon if you don't have Sting the Poison. You then run 2 Sting Lancers because it can actually be useful outside of the regular combo with Atlas, including on your opponent's turn, but 3 would be a little bit too bricky. Assault Roller is another Aztekipede, except it's a hard once per turn, so only run 1. Neptune is only really here to recycle banished insects like your Resonance Insects and maybe a Gokkipole or a PK Felina that you banished. Then the Battle Wasps are still the best extension package for the deck, so run 3 Pin the Bullseye, 3 Sting the Poison, 1 Arbalest Rapid Fire, and 1 Twinbow the Attacker. Pin is just free extension with a bit of burn, while Sting the Poison is not only a good starter that can search Pin, but also negate when on the board. You'll want to try and get to this as part of your combo because of that, since it's very easy to summon it back from the graveyard. Arbalest is a searchable extender if you have nothing better to use Armorhorn's extra normal summon on, and Twinbow is a level 3 extender, which is good for making Cicada King if you're done making non-insect monsters for the turn. Then of course we run 3 Dragonbite for the reasons I've gone over already. Aztekipede is at 3 because it's very free extension, and also an easy Borreload Savage Dragon with Dragonbite. Resonance Insect is at 3 because it's pretty damn broken. I also opted for 2 Doomdozer because it's also very free extension, especially with Neptune being able to shuffle back the banished monsters, and together with Sting the Poison, it's a Baronne de Fleur. Gokkipole is there for Resonance Insect combos, Retaliating Sea is a searchable hand trap of sorts, and finally Scary Moth is a window that you can incorporate into your combos to lock your opponent out of special summoning more than once. Run 1 Beetrooper Descent because it at least gives you some back row removal, and a free token while you're at it. Then you might be surprised to see 3 Flying Sting, but hear me out before you cut it down to 1. Invincible Atlas isn't actually that good of a card, but usually you'll need to invest 4 link materials into it, as well as having another monster to tribute just to get that one counter trap. It also locks you into insects while it's on the board, but unlike Scout Buggy or Armorhorn, it isn't actually very easy to remove from your board. While it's still important as an option to have, if you start with Flying Sting in your hand, you have a lot more flexibility in your combos, like making Scary Moth or doing Hulk combos on your opponent's turn, that you would have a much harder time doing if you had to go into an Atlas. If you don't value the flexibility, replace the extra 2 copies either with more hand traps, going second cards, or find room for a crossout designator package and at least 1 Nibiru. Speaking of, I went for 3 Ash and 1 Callby as far as staples go. Now for the extra deck, you do have options, but this is what I settled on. The insect package is fairly standard with 1 PK Felina, 2 Armorhorn, 2 Papillon, 1 Invincible Atlas, and 2 Cicada King. The 2 Papillons are there because it's the easiest one to negate with Cicada King to get a Scary Moth, but it's nice to have another one if you spent the first one on that. Next there's the Synchro package. Hulk is to search Sting the Poison and then play on your opponent's turn, while Baronne and Savage give you 2 different leveled options for your powerful negate. Next are some Synchro tuners that you can summon with Hulk. Formula Synchron gives you a draw before going into something else, which could easily be a Desert Locust to rip a card from your opponent's hand. Then that can go into something else, usually a Baronne or a Borreload, but occasionally could make a Shen as well. Finally, Coral Dragon is just a stepping stone to higher level synchros that gives you a draw in the process. Now, since some of those synchros are pretty optional, here's some other cards that you can consider. First of all, if you're not confident in avoiding the insect lock, you can try some Battle Wasp synchros despite them being fairly subpar. Hammer is like a really bad Boral Sword Dragon. Azusa is a synchro tuner, which I guess could come up. And finally, Halberd can get over some big untargetable boss monsters like Dragoon, if you're encountering that often enough for it to be a problem. Next there's Paladin Zegtron, which is something you could make with Formula Synchron to guarantee that you'll live until next turn. Summon it on your opponent's turn, and if it resolves, the you take no damage will last even if it gets removed from the field, so you'll basically definitely live to see another turn. Finally, you run enough level 8 monsters that occasionally you could make a Hope Harbinger, so run that if you'd like. So that's the deck. But like I said, the combos are pretty different with every hand, so you really need to see it in action. Let's move on to the combos. So, combo time! But first, if you've been enjoying the videos so far, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. So for this first one, before we start going into synchro stuff, here's a hand that can make use of Scary Moth. Normal summon Sting, who searches Pin, who then summons itself. With those two, make an Armoured Horn, who summons Resonance Insect. Assault Roller summons itself, and then those two go into a Pico Filena. That triggers both Pico Filena and Resonance, searching a Doomdozer and getting a Scary Moth equipped from the deck. Doomdozer summons itself, banishing Resonance Insect, who summons Gokipole, who then gives you an Aztekipede. Make an Atlas now, getting the links into the graveyard along with Scary Moth. It tributes to Doomdozer to get Scout Buggy, who summons out another before making a Cicada King after Armoured Horn banishes itself to summon itself back. You can then summon Aztekipede and link it into the Papillon with Armoured Horn. When it tries to activate, negate it with Cicada King, you can then summon Scary Moth back from the graveyard. You're then free to set Fly and Sting, and since you drew it, you were able to make a Cicada King with Atlas instead of needing to go into Sting Lancer. You now have 2 negates and a window, which should hopefully be enough. Now it's time to show Dragonbite off. Start by normal summoning it, which gets you a Resonance Insect on the field without needing to use Armoured Horn's effect. Link them into a Hulk, which gets you a Doomdozer from Resonance as well as a Sting the Poison on the board. Summon Doomdozer, doing the Resonance line to get another Aztekipede, and then synchro summon both of those into a Baronne. Now just summon both Aztekipedes, making them into an Armoured Horn who gets out a Scout Buggy. That will give you an easy Cicada King, before linking the rest into Seraphim Papillon. Set the trap, and now, on your opponent's turn, you can bring back Sting that Hulk searched in order to get another negate and a search of Arbalest for follow-up plays. Now here's one to show you doing synchros on your opponent's turn. Start with Dragonbite into Scout Buggy, getting another copy of itself as well as a pin from your hand. Pin and Scout make a Pico Filena, who discards a Scary Moth to attach a Resonance from the deck. Summon Aztekipede, make a Seraphim with the second Scout Buggy, and then make a Hulk with your other monsters. Making Hulk triggers the Resonance Insect for a Doomdozer while getting Sting the Poison out, both of which easily add up into a Baronne, while also getting you an Assault Roller to give you a level 4 monster on the board for next turn. During their turn, Seraphim gets back Sting for the extra negate and search, while then Hulk can banish itself for Formula Synchron. That draws you a card, and then immediately goes into Locust, ripping a card from your opponent's hand. Finally, here's a hand that shows off typical Beetrooper combos, but with the addition of Baronne. Start with Dragonbite, whose summon gets out a Scale Bomber as well as 2 Scout Buggies. Those two make a Pico Filena, getting you an equipped Resonance Insect on the Dragonbite. It then banishes a Scout Buggy to become level 7, ideal for making a Baronne with Scale Bomber. That triggers the Resonance Insect to get you a Doomdozer. Doomdozer's summon gets you another Resonance Insect, and since you now have 3 banished cards, you can summon a Neptune to shuffle them back. Make an Armoured Horn out of the Resonance Insect, and then draw a card with Picofalena's other effect. Resonance gets you another Doom Laser, and then you can make a Seraphim Papillon. Banishing 3 with Armoured Horn gets it back onto the field, as well as letting you send a Sting the Poison into the graveyard for Seraphim next turn. Finally, summon Doom Laser as tribute fodder for Atlas to make Sting Lancer to search the trap. Now on your opponent's turn, don't forget to revive Sting, so that you'll have 3 negates, some powerful monsters, and some follow-up plays. So that's the deck. Are you going to try the new support in Beetroopers, or did you drop them when their second wave of support wasn't very good? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe. Special thanks to my tier 2 patrons Jason Murat and Violet Rain. The link to that is in the description. Thanks for watching!